Couldn't decide on the name for the talk, so please enjoy a variety of terrible puns. Yeah, hi, my name is Chris Hart. I have been a game developer for quite a long time now, developer of any kind for a very long time, more than that. I worked with Unreal probably from about 2020 until the end of last year, solidly, and I loved it. I spent a lot of my time working with the game playability system, and it just felt like a really good design pattern and made some really cool stuff. Every project I worked on got cancelled, bar one. I was, my first game credit as an engineer was on Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed. That was in Unreal 4, and that was using gas. So that was my first introduction to gas, and then we spent about 4 years, well, three or so, 4 years working on a cooperative multiplayer game, which was really awesome, but we kind of ran out of money, so it didn't happen. But gas is still awesome, and the game was great, but I can't talk about it. So this is going to be my, here's what gas is, here's how it works, and hopefully this will be, you know, a refresher for some of you, maybe something useful for those who haven't used it before. It's going to be a bit of an overview from the ground up. So what is gas? It is a framework of code that is bundled into Unreal that is designed for multiplayer gameplay. You can use it for single player too. It provides a way to create a bunch of gameplay systems without having to roll everything by hand. So you don't have to reinvent networking from scratch. You don't have to reinvent a bunch of UI fields that will do what you want them to, because you've got a lot of stuff there built in. Thanks, Epic, we like that. Who uses it is pretty much, I would say, all major studios that have anything to do with using multiplayer gameplay abilities, although there was one I interviewed with which wasn't using it, and I was very confused as to how they were going to do a multiplayer game without it. I won't name them, but yeah, it is a great system. It is multiplayer out of the box, kind of. You still have to know how multiplayer works, you still have to be aware of when to replicate, when not to replicate, but a lot of it comes for free. Drawbacks, it's a little heavy in some regards. It's not as light as some systems can be, but it's a great place to start, and it's probably good for most situations for just getting a game together and making it work. And because you get obviously full access to the source code, you can hack away, make changes, and find bugs and fix them as you go along, which is always fun. Some examples of gas, well, yes, so in Ghostbusters, there was, you would play as one of four Ghostbusters going together into a mission where you had to capture ghosts and trap them. And you would basically fire off your proton packs, and there would be abilities for capturing ghosts, there would be abilities for sprinting is an ability. There would be abilities for, as a ghost, you could possess objects and then move them around. It's really fun. So yeah, I'm going to talk about all of these sorts of things as I go along. Here we go. And for a long time, the only real documentation about this was this one GitHub repository. It is still, I would say, possibly the best way to learn about gas. It is a little out of date, but the foundation's still solid. Most of it's still accurate. Unreal have got much better, Epic have got much better with their own documentation now. So that's been great. And obviously now we have LLMs to help us out with such things. So they've learned. They've got a lot better in the last year. Last time I tried it with Unreal, it was a disaster. But it's got better. So, what is gas? It's abilities, things that you can do. I can throw things, I can jump. Attributes, things that you have. I have a health attribute. How healthy am I? Probably not as high as I was yesterday. There was a lot of running up and down the escalators. But anyway, you have health, You could have shields, you could have mana, you could have stamina. These are numerical values that relate to an actor, character, participant in a system that can change over time. Cues. Gameplay cues are a way to replicate the consequences of your actions with visual and sound flourishes. So if I want to just fire off a gameplay cue that applies a camera shake and then has an explosion and plays a sound, then that can be done with gameplay cues. These are sorts of things that don't need to necessarily be running on a server. They're just client-side consequences. Effects are how you pass on the consequences. So if I have an ability to jump, the effect is going to change my movement so that I will momentarily jump. Or if I have a sprint, it will change my movement speed. It will modify an attribute somewhere that then controls something else. Tags are like keys and identifiers for what can do what to whom. So I can, in a cooperative PvE scenario, I can damage the enemy but not another player. And a tag will clearly identify that this is a player and this is an enemy. And so tags are used for things like that. They're also used for pretty much everything else. They're kind of a foundation, really. So like if I want to use a gameplay cue, I identify it by tag. If I'm using an ability, I can identify it by tag. What's my cooldown on this particular ability? Tags. So yes, I have a fire ability and I'm flaming and monster. Hi. My attributes, my health. Oh no, the monster's health is going down because I'm set fire to the monster. And you can see the fire because I have pretty VFX and SFX going on. The gameplay effects are the things that change the values of the attributes. If the fire attack does 20 damage, it subtracts 20 from the health attribute. And on from here. So, things you can do. The overall control over whether you can do any of this is whether you have a component, you being obviously a third-person character or a first-person character. You're in the game. So if you have a gameplay, if you have an ability system component on your character, they can now use abilities, have tags, cause effects, and all sorts of things like that. And this component can live on, full characters, or it can live on much more simplified actors that don't necessarily move, but they could still have damage, like a wall or a door. Attributes. So yes, these are the things that you have. Most of the time you'll define this in C++. A lot of gas you can do in Blueprint, but some of it still kind of leans back into C++. Luckily, there's quite a lot of examples of it in use. The Lyra sample game has a bunch of code. It's a way to implement gas. I wouldn't say it's the way to implement gas. It's got some really good stuff to it, but it can be a bit of a beast to wrangle, and it's not, I wouldn't say it's particularly beginner friendly in terms of learning how gas works. But I've made some sample code that'll help. You can keep it fairly simple. You basically have values and properties that are defined in your code. There are actual packages out there that can make it so that you can make those from a blueprint. I haven't tried any of them out. I found one by Googling. It looked reasonable. So yes, defined in C++. Little gotchas. So if I have health, my health can vary over time. I will usually have a maximum health, so I don't gonna heal beyond that. But you can change the values of things like your maximum health. And there are minimum and maximum values that you can set all of your values to live within. The patterns are a little strange. The UI gives you the impression that you set a minimum and a maximum, and that's a useful number, but it isn't always. So I'll show a demo of that in a bit. But yes, usually you'll have the pair of attributes. This is my upper range, and this is the one that changes. So yes, cues. are the visual, the audio, and they can be a one-shot event, so pew, done. They can be looping, so if I have like a constant debuff that lasts for like 10 seconds or something like that, you might see a sort of a purple haze around my head until it's gone away. Or they can just linger consistently, forever. I'm not sure. I can't remember why I said lingering. It was there for a reason. Yeah, we'll have a look at some gameplay cues in a bit. And yes, tags. Tags are used everywhere. We're getting a bit dry at this point. Let's see where we're at. Oh yeah, and effects. Gameplay effects are great. So yes, we can use them to alter attribute values, so I can adjust my health. But they can also trigger gameplay cues. They can add tags, they can remove tags, and they can grant or remove abilities. They can do a heck of a lot of things. These effects can alter the state of the system, and they're very cool. So yes, we've got all of this to cover. Let's see. Adding gas to your project. It's a plugin. It's not enabled by default on a third-person project. I just went to plugins and searched for gameplay abilities and added it, and it was there. I don't know if that's the case for all the different templates. I only bothered with the third-person template, but it's really easy to add. It'll probably have to restart afterwards. This we can skip, but if you like C++, you probably want to subclass all of the stuff because later on you'll benefit from it. I will come here. All right, let me bring up. Goodness, I hadn't launched Unreal. I got everything else set up. Here we go. Come on. It's getting there. I will say that Rider is faster than Visual Studio for me in most cases, especially in closing down. I was at one point when I had to close down Visual Studio and it would take 10 minutes for no reason. Why is that off the bottom of the screen? We just don't know. We can edit this bit out.
Can you share questions that people will rate for this?
Fire a question.
So one of the things that we tried to do on a project a long time ago was use gas, and we had like some really long running animations, like multiple minute like sequences and stuff. Have you had any luck doing that, like anything that's running more than 30 seconds with gas?
It's a good one. I haven't had to do anything that I think lasts that long. Mostly they would trigger a state change and then you would be in a different state and then you would come out of that state at the end. But an animation, most of the abilities I've worked with have animations and animation montages and have events that fire from those. Is it back up? It's up. So no, I don't know. It'd be an interesting one to test. All right. Here we are, third person level, and let me just get my, here's my demo. What's the button to go full screen when you play and when you, no, that one. There, all right, good old third person template. Ignore that thing. All right, so we have a character, and we want to be able to use gameplay abilities with that character. So let's start from So third person character comes with the third person demo. But if I want to work with gas, I'm going to need to add a component. So let's start with that character and make our own. Apologies for squinting. Create child blueprint class, and we're going to call it BP demo character. All right, demo character is going to have I can't remember the Windows keybind to zoom in. Was it Windows P? Windows Plus? Not today, apparently. Oh, is it thinking? It's thinking. Oh yes, we're doing a lot of thinking right now. Please hold for Microsoft. Yes, 1 frame per second mouse. I love it. That's great. It might be. Oh. All right, it's working. I'm not going to question it. Right, let's add that component before we get any further. I'm sorry if this is a bit hard to read for those at the back. Do we need to dim the lights at all? Can you see enough? We good? I will add ability system. I have added an ability system. So I have an ability system and I can now do stuff. This is great. I want to make it so that this character can use an ability. So perhaps I will come into the character's blueprint. And what I'm going to do is, my goodness, I can barely see anything. In fact, I will switch over to one I made earlier because it's a little easier that way. Simple demo character. So in simple demo character, I've got an ability system, and in begin play, I give an ability to my character. And I have an ability class in here, and I have an ability that I've created called GA demo. This is a highly exciting demo ability, and in this ability, it will say the words activate ability, and that's that. It's not massively exciting, but it does the job. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run over this red circle, and when I do, there'll be some teeny tiny text in the corner, and it says activate ability on both the client and the server. And so what's happening here is I have an action pad that basically tries to activate an ability on the thing that is overlapping it. And so the other actor in this case has an ability system component, because I just gave it one, and I'm going to try and activate the GA demo ability. And so all I have to do is say try activate ability for class. So we gave it the ability, something else is activating it. So that's one way of activating an ability. Where are we at? So yes, how did I make that ability? I made it via a right click. You can right click, create a blueprint, and you'll search for gameplay ability. And the answer is indeed a gameplay ability. There are some that are included as part of the gas package, but I wanted just a plain and simple JTest ability. And you'll create it, and there's nothing much to see apart from an empty blueprint and a bunch of stuff on the side. Are we going to try it again? No, Windows Plus doesn't do anything. Oh, Microsoft. I know it's an accessibility setting. Yeah, I can do that. That's an option. Windows is so...
You're on Windows 11?
Yeah.
So if you hit Windows plus plus, like hit Windows key plus plus and then Windows.
Nope. It just locked up. That's okay. The idea about scale was the right one. Let's go with that. Let's try 200%. Oh, it's big. It's big. Oh yes, we've got text now. Even I can see it. That's great. I left my glasses over there. It's fine. Okay. Is that any more readable? That should be better. All right, excellent. Thank you. Good suggestion. So we have here on an ability in the class defaults a bunch of fields where we can enter tags, a bunch of replication settings, and a cost, which we're not currently using, and a cooldown that we're not currently using, and ability triggers that also this one isn't currently using. This is just out of the box. This is an empty ability. And so we'd probably want to give it a tag to identify this ability. And these are some which I have made, so I can make a new tag. I'm going to add a sub tag. I'm going to call it test. No! Oh, we're having fun. Ability.test. Add new tag. This has now got a tag. We now know it's called the test ability. Okay. Then we can control whether or not you can activate this based on what tags that character has. And we can control all sorts of things relating to targeting via tags. I think I have a whole section in my demo about this. I'm not going to do too much here. Let me see, where are we at? We're up to creating a gameplay ability. All right, we just did that. So demo ability, which now you should be able to see a bit better. Oh, goodness, let's go. Two to 3 business days later. Let's close everything. All right, so the demo ability was activate ability, print a string, and end the ability. And I didn't even give this one any tags. I didn't give it any information, no cooldowns, nothing. And it still worked, so that was nice. Creating a gameplay effect. All right, yeah, let's create a gameplay effect. And then we will talk more about what we're going to do with gameplay effects. All right, content draw. Let's dock this for a moment because then it's not going to go away. Filters probably not. Gameplay effects. So, well, I have one here I already made. Where was I going with this? I remember now. Okay, so my symbol character, I basically gave the ability directly to the character at begin play. So as soon as you connect to that character, it has that ability out of the box. But a good way of assigning a sort of a whole loadout of abilities is to do it via a gameplay effect, because you can then just stack together all the abilities you want to grant to a character in one go, and that's nice. So let's do that. We have a gameplay effect. If I create a new gameplay effect, today, some point today, thank you. this one, we want to give abilities demo. So I've created a gameplay effect, but we don't need blueprints with a gameplay effect, so I'm immediately going to close it and reopen it. That gives us a bit more real estate. Okay, so this is an example of different kinds of duration of gameplay effect. When you're giving in abilities to a character, you probably want this to last for the duration of that character's existence. So this isn't going to be an instant one-off thing. This is going to be an infinite one. You can also have a duration. So if you only want to have the ability for 3 seconds and have it go away again, you give the duration on the gameplay effect, and it will just disappear after the duration has expired. And then I want to, in the component section, add grant gameplay abilities component. And you'll notice in here there's a whole bunch of options for what we can do in a gameplay effect, which is why trying to list what a gameplay effect can do doesn't really do it justice. It can do so much stuff. It can apply additional effects for the wonderful nested goodness. Block abilities with tags. You can cancel abilities with tags. So any ability that has a specific tag, if you're doing fire abilities and you suddenly gain a cold tag via a gameplay effect, you can cancel everything that does fire. You can't do fire now, you're cold. Chance to apply this effect. May or may not do a thing. You can grant tags, you can make it immune to other effects, all sorts of things here. So I'm going to just do the grant abilities. And then I'm going to, in this array, add the demo one that I had. And that's pretty much it. It's infinite, and I want to make sure that the character has this ability from the start. So compile it, save it, and that's about that. So instead of doing give ability, I can apply a gameplay effect to myself. So here, still using my ability system reference, I want to give them the give abilities demo. There we go. So on begin play, we now apply that gameplay effect, which means I have that ability via the other means. So I can compile that, save that, and hopefully, when I run it, boop, boop, and I run over that thing, you'll still see text in the top corner. Yep, activate ability. Woo. So that's exciting. So that's 2 ways you can gain abilities. And it doesn't have to be you giving you the ability. So if you walk through a portal or something and you suddenly want to gain the ability to jump higher because you've gone through to the moon and your gravity is different, you can now suddenly gain the ability to do a super jump because you're on the moon. So that the portal can give you the ability. It's all, we're all participating in the fun of giving things out. Where are we at? Right. So, yeah, effects. So yeah, we can add and remove tags, we can grant abilities, we can alter attribute values, we can do custom damage calculations, and conditional application of damage. So if you had, say, a shooter game and you wanted a chance to ricochet, that would be something that would be a conditional trigger on whether the ricochet was going to trigger, and the ricochet would probably be another ability that would then trigger, and then it would hit things, and which is quite fun. Yeah, we did that one. We did that one. We granted it. Yay! Alrighty. So, attributes. Sorry, there'll be code. We don't need too much code though. So basically, I have a demo attribute set. Let me see. Can I hide that and hide that? Woohoo! I can. Yep, this is literally just 2 attributes. It's health and max health. So my maximum health and then whatever my health will be as things change. We've got a few events based on when a gameplay effect happens. So if I hit a heal, if I'm at 80 health, my maximum is 100, and I pick up a health orb that would take me over that 100 threshold, I can clamp the value before it gets applied so that I don't exceed that number. I have a couple of delegates here, or events that are going to fire off for when things change. And yeah, in my code I have replication stuff. We always want to replicate changes to the attributes. And indeed, clamping values. You can broadcast changes and subscribe to those kinds of changes. Some of these, this particularly long function call was something that Lyra had. It just had like a whole bunch of useful things, and occasionally you can pick out the pieces you want to get the pieces of information you want to make changes later on. But basically, the simple part is damage go in, health go out. So we have code for attributes. But once you've got those made, you don't have to worry about the C++ as much, because then you can work with spreadsheets. I know we love spreadsheets. So this is the nice in-engine representation where you have your base value for what health and max health will start at. These are the 2 minimum maximum values that I mentioned previously. You can't really work with these directly in gameplay, which is very annoying. If you gained a maximum health increase in the game, better to do that via the code side of things. But yeah, so these are the values I have set in here. This is a data table. You can create attributes by right-clicking, and you go to data, and you go to data table. And the row structure will be attribute metadata. And you say OK. And it didn't choose which attribute set to work with. So how does it know what to set the values to? It's naming. It's all strings. Sorry. So yep, this is for the demo attribute self. Demo attribute set health value. That will be the setting for the player. So I have a table that represents those values for the player, and I have one for the enemy. My enemy could have more health and will take a few more hits. Might be more meaningful, might not be, might be spongy. That's not for me, that's for the designers to work out. You can export these values and then re-import them. And I had a pretty picture of a spreadsheet where it was, yeah, I had my values in a spreadsheet, and you can just import from Google Slides, Google Sheets. It's very useful. So an easy way to test out your attribute values is to apply them in the editor on your character. I close this. Simple demo here we go, simple demo character. There's my ability system. And in here, whoop, I don't need that anymore. Let's get rid of that one. Doop. Ability system. If you scroll down, you'll find a thing called attribute test. It's still called attribute test. I don't know why. They never changed it. But this is where you can put your starting data if you want to. You can do this in so many different ways, but out of the box, you can just add your attributes here. So if I want this character to have the demo attribute set, and I want it to have players attributes, that's pretty much all I would need to do to make sure that this character has a health of 100 to start with. Now, in theory, Let's see if this works. Bloop. Bloop. It does work. Okay. Except it's a little hard to see because the preview is over the top of it. However, what I have just done was bring up the gameplay debugger, which is apostrophe and then 3 on the numpad. You need a numerical keypad for this. But anyway, so we have it, and as you can see the health is 100 there, and maximum health is also 100. It's a bit obscured by the preview, but it's at least there. But this is quite useful because I can also see which abilities are on this character, and I can see which effects are currently active on this character too. So if you had like a big stack of all of the effects currently on your character, you'll see it there. Okay. So, where are we at? So that was the ability debugger. Oh yeah, the other option, bloop, bloop, is tilde, and then you do show debug, ability system. And this is even harder to read for you guys, I am sorry. But basically you can see there that I have a health and maximum health of 100. It doesn't show me my current effects, does not show me my current abilities. So it's a different view. Bloop. There we go. All right. Steam. Steam is not the time right now. I'm so sorry. Right. All the reasons why my laptop was being slow are now revealing themselves. So, attack ability. All right. So I'm going to make a more interesting ability here because text on the screen isn't that great. So let's do something more fun. We're going to have press a button, activate an ability, play an animation, and at the right point in the animation, we're going to do the thing, and then we're going to end. So we've got to set up input handling, an animation, and event handling for the right time in the animation to do the thing. Whew. And we're going to need gameplay tags. That's okay. All right, let's go back to code for this. So input handling. Where did that go? I remember now. All right. So I have a second character. I'm going to have my gas demo character and loop. Here we are, input action handling. If I can just make this big enough without spoiling the rest of my demo. Here we go. So I have an input action that I have created earlier, IA attack. And it is an action that is bound currently to my left click, which if you've used input actions before, you'll be familiar with where that works. It's in here. I have actions, I have IA attack, and in my input mapping, I have attack, bound to left mouse button or number 1. I would have put it on a controller, but I didn't have one to plug in. You can bind any key bindings you want. You can just press this and say 7 is going to be the attack button. And I don't know why I'd do that, but you know, you can put that back. But this isn't to talk about input mappings, but that's how you do it, very roughly. And so I have a handler on my character for when I do that. I'm going to try and activate this ability by tag, because why not? And my attack tags will be ability.attack. So this is going to try and activate any abilities that have this. There might be more than one. They will all activate at that time. I have my ability. It's called attack. And it's going to do a whole bunch of things. But let's have a look what we've got here. So it is ability.attack. And it will be blocked. It won't be able to activate if you're on cooldown, and you cannot activate it if you're dead. It's really funny when you don't add that and your character's lying on the floor and they're dead, but you can still press the button, so they're doing all these animations, but technically you're not actually alive anymore. So yeah, I like to make sure I always put those tags on just in case. We'll wire those up later. But for now, we're going to have it so that when the attack comes in, it's going to do the thing. So what's it going to do? We will, when we activate the ability by the tag, we will commit, or will we? We will check, can we do this based on any costs that are associated with it? Do I have enough mana? Do I have enough stamina? Do I have enough health? Is this some kind of freaky thing where I have to lose health to do a thing? Those are all valid checks that you can apply, and they are usually set by gameplay effects. And cooldowns are gameplay effects with duration usually. If I can do it, I will proceed. And I'll go to the next stage, which is to play a montage and wait. This spins up a animation montage, which I have created earlier. Pew! Pew! There you go. It's a built-in animation, thanks Unreal, which I found, and I thought, yeah, that looks fine. And when it gets to about the right time, like here, I want to launch a projectile from roughly where my hand is. And so I set up a notify in order to trigger this. And so what's a notify? How did that work? So here we go. I can create animation notify. There are a lot of options here. I created one as a child of play montage notify called gameplay tag event. And this, you can override a function for receive notify. So when you receive a notification from a montage, because this is a montage notify, when I receive that notification from the montage, do the thing. Thing we're going to do, receive the notify, get the owner, is it valid, send a gameplay event to the person that did this. And that's that. So I'm going to pass on, wow, what? Hang on a sec. Did I set the tag in here? Let's have a look. I did. I set it in the montage. Thank God. Oh yes, because that notify can be used. Like, how on earth is this working? Because you can set it, one notify can be used in multiple animations, and you can do multiple things. So I set the tag in this montage. I want to call event.fire. So when the montage reaches that point, it will trigger. So I go back to my attack. So once I've started the montage, we wait for the gameplay event with the tag event.fire. When the animation completes, it's too late. If it's been interrupted or cancelled, we just cancel it and we end the ability. And we'll see a screen, on screen you'll see some text. It'll say fire, because that's always fun. Then you get a reference to the actor that has this ability. The most useful node you'll see everywhere on a blueprint. Get avatar actor from actor info. If we get our owner, then with a bunch of funky math to say, yes, here and a bit in front of me, we'll spawn this thing. And it'll spawn a projectile that I made. So if I come in here, not that one, this one. All right, this is the character I want, not you. There you go. All right. So there's my fun character. Character V2 has coloration, so I can tell. And look, they're throwing cubes. We're throwing cubes here. Engineers wrote this. My artistic talent extends to cubes and spheres and not much more. So we can throw the cube. So what does this do? And why can I do so many of them? I probably don't want to do like so many. I don't have any cooldowns on this ability. So let's see what else we can do with this. We have blueprint. Where's my simple projectile? Here we are. Simple projectile. It is literally a cube with an overlap event. And so, you know, if it hits something, I will let you know that I've hit them. If it has an ability system, great, let's do stuff. And yeah, so we'll apply a gameplay effect to the target. So if they have an ability system, we will pass on special treasures to the thing I have just hit. And it's going to be called GE damage, which is a damaging gameplay effect. GE damage boop, is going to be an instant gameplay effect that modifies the health attribute by adding -30. It'll only apply if you're not already dead. And that's about it. So that's that. Okay, so I need a target. Well, you may have noticed my beautiful enemy character is a green cylinder. Again, engineer. This guy has an ability system, not much else. It is basically a pawn that doesn't really move. It has a health bar in the world, which is just a UI widget that just happens to be above it. But importantly, of course, it has the ability system component, and it has the hooks for the enemy attributes. So this thing should have about 200 health. So let's have another look. No, this, then that one. All right. So there's my enemy, and I can throw cubes at it. Pew! And I'm damaging it. Oh no, I hit BP target dummy. And when the health goes to 0, boom, it dies. So here's a fun thing. Let me do that again. That. So if you do the gameplay debugger, you'll notice that I am currently looking at the target dummy. You can see it's the target dummy. I'm pointing at my screen because obviously you can see my screen. No, you can see my screen over here. It has the tags character.enemy. My mouse has disappeared, of course. But yeah, so it has character enemy. It has a health of 200 and a maximum health of 200. And I can. Oh, yeah, it's not the finest of attacks, but you know, you can see the health number go down as I hit it. And then it's gone. And another thing you can see. Another thing. There's one more thing. Come on, F11. If we do the other way of showing, you can cycle between the things you're looking at with page up and page down, which are around somewhere on my keyboard, God knows where. Gosh darn it, there it is. Okay, hang on. Page up, no. Numlock, that's it. There we go, figured it out. Doesn't seem to be showing what I want it to. Win some, lose some. But anyway. All right, so yeah, that's an ability that fires a projectile that applies a gameplay effect that modifies some attributes. You may have seen some exciting gameplay cues going on in there, which, where are we? Attack, simple demo cat, don't want you. BP projectile V1, action pad, don't need that. Tester dummy, here we go. Event graph. So when my dummy dies, oh no, dummy, are you dead yet? So yeah, first of all, when we start it, it gains an effect which gives it the tag that it's an enemy. And I'm binding an event to on health changed. So this has come from the demo attribute set where we defined health attributes. To surface that to the player, you can basically, I think one of the patterns that is most common is because UI widgets can easily access the character that owns them. So you'll often have on the character or the controller or the pawn a way to access and bind to the event of the health value changing, of the shield value changing, of all the other attributes and things like that. Anything you want to show on the UI. And this one is binding to the event, which I think on health changed in this case comes from the character's class. I have a little bit of code for that. Gas dummy character. I have some very hacky Lambda functions that are binding to the attribute changes. These are based on the attributes that we saw in code previously. And it's just going to broadcast any changes to the health based on whether the health changed or the maximum health has changed. And so in here we got that handler, and then we say for the health bar, we can update the health bar with the values. And if it's changed and we are less than or equal to 0, oh no, we have died. So we execute a gameplay queue that says death. And then we apply the gameplay effect to self, which is GE death. And then we set our lifespan to 2 seconds, and then we go. So nice and simple. So there's that. Now I can also do, I can attack more than one thing. Let's go back to, here we are. So when you go to play mode, probably want to set either player's listen server or player's client. If you're going to do a peer-to-peer, you probably want to have some testing on both of these situations, but I tend to like to play as client because that's where it always breaks. You always want to make sure everything replicates and the clients can see everything. And so if I had 2 characters and I want to try playing with 2-player, now we get fun. Oh, all right. So there we have player 1 and player 2. Pew, pew. Oh no, player 2 is firing off projectiles too. But player 1 can't see them. Oh no. But do they still work? Oh yes, they do. So player 2 can still damage player 1, even though player 1 cannot see them. So what's going on here? Well, the gameplay abilities are all replicating. The ability system attributes are replicating great, but we just can't see the projectile. So I probably missed a replication on the projectile. Oh dear. So in attack, we want to spawn a projectile that actually does the replication thing. So projectile V1, I didn't have any replication on the visual bits, which is fine. The effect still worked, but no one else could see it. So if I go and set that to projectile 2, which does have those checked, V2. There we go. Bloop, bloop, and play. Now I can see it. Hopefully you can see that too. Projectiles are going on both the clients, and I can now damage the other player, and they can see that they're being damaged by something before they die. So that's that. And then I can also modify my ability to have cooldowns. So I mentioned how cooldowns could also be gameplay effects. We have a simple gameplay effect here, which has duration of 2 seconds, and it just grants a tag to the character that gains this effect. Ability.cooldown. So I can't do anything when this is active on the character. It's really easy to implement this on the attack. Go to my class defaults, and I'll scroll down to cooldown effect. I have GE cooldown. So compile that and save it. And so now I can fire a projectile, but I can only fire one every 2 seconds, even though I'm mashing the button. So I now have a cooldown, and you can bind to cooldowns using UI widgets as well, which is kind of how you do the whole, I can't do anything else, you'll have some sort of a progress bar filling up to show you can't use it. Now what else was I going to do? I haven't implemented any costs in here, but I could do. I did have the character dead. You can't fire any abilities if you're dead. It's a bit difficult to demo that one within 2 seconds because of the 2 windows thing. So you'll have to trust me that that is working. And then if I'm dead, I can't do anything. The rest of the player's blueprint, we have the abilities are granted by effect. I have player tags that I applied via a gameplay effect as well. So you can keep just applying all of the effects you want when you start the game. For the UI side of things, the controlled player will have a HUD rather than the dummy character having one in-world. The hookups is slightly different, but it's mostly similar kind of code. We create the widget, slap it on the player screen, and then the UI widget itself has health bar has just a little function to update its value, which is being called directly from the dummy character. From the player character, because it's on the HUD, the code on the HUD has a bit more. We just get the owning player. Is it a gas demo character? Casting is annoying, but this is only in construct. On health changed, handle the event, update the health bar. And when we finish, unhook. So that's that. What else was I going to show? Oh yes. So when I did do some audio with the death effect, but it's nice to have feedback when you hit something. Is this thing still turned on? No. Why would you be? Thank you. All right, let's turn that up. So if I want to apply some gameplay cues on hit as well as on death, I can do that by just editing the effect on damage. So yeah, can't be dead to be damaged, that's fine, but we also have a section called gameplay cues. So I'll just add one here. Gameplay cue tag. Hit. So on hit, we want to do something. Let's have a look at a gameplay cue. I haven't shown you any yet. They are here. So the one you saw was for death. These burst effects are really great. Burst effects don't really need a blueprint. They basically hook up a load of things without having to edit any blueprint values at all. You've got burst particles, so this is where I'm doing the death explosion. And then there's the death sound, which is that's what's using my audio. That's why it went to sleep. That's why we want that one? Maybe?
It's on the aux, so I think it'll be the headphones.
That one.
I think it's the headphones, the second one. That would be your computer speakers.
Might be. Might be. Let's try that and then, yeah. Gosh darn it, why is this so annoying today? I can hear it, but I don't know if this is the right one. You were absolutely spot on. You go, Cookie. You can reject it if you want, though. GDPR requires that you're optionally able to disregard any cookies you do not want. All right, so we've got death, explosions and effects. We've got hit, explosions and effects. These are the hit ones. Different Niagara system, different sound. But you can also create other gameplay cues. I have worked on some hideously complicated gameplay cues that involve all sorts of graphs with all sorts of things. I like these ones. These ones are great. You can just throw the stuff in and things happen. And they're nice and simple. So now when we run, we should have, I'll stick with, yeah, you or you. Oh, you can come and do the fun things, except you're not big enough. Well, Nope, missed. Oh, yes. Pew! So you can pew, pew, pew. Punch. Punch! You gonna explode? Boop. So that one's gone. Player 2's gonna win the game. Snooze, you lose, player 1. Boom. Bye-bye, target dummy. And that's it. So that's gameplay cues. And that's pretty much most of it. Let me see. So I've got slides for a lot of this stuff if it didn't work, then we've got a lot of other things here. So I will make these slides available later, along with the code. But that's basically gas in a nutshell. Do we have any questions?
I have a question. I've literally never used gas, so thank you for the overview. This strikes me as a very classic epic system in the sense that, like, you can do a lot of stuff with a lot of, and you can do things a lot of different ways. Like, I think you said you have effects that trigger effects, and effects that suppress effects, and you can, like, do stuff with tags, and you can add or remove abilities. It seems like there's nothing stopping you ending up with total spaghetti if you go down that path. So do you have a sort of theory of, like, how things should be structured so that you can, like, keep your head wrapped around the whole setup?
That's a good question. So the question is how do you keep it under control, because it could do so many things. I think you'll find yourself falling into patterns of how you set things up and how they work over time as part of it. And a lot of that gets tribal knowledge down. This person has worked with gas for a long time. That's how they do it. Let's do it that way then. And so there's a lot of that kind of continuation of the tribal knowledge. I mentioned it in passing. Lyra starter game is good in some regards, but it's very weighty in how they have implemented a lot of this stuff. They have a very modular system for how they get their gas set up and how they get, in fact, all of their plugin architecture is very modular, which I think is a way too heavy for learning from it. When I was first learning it, I did a course on Udemy with Tom Lumen, which was a good overview. I think, my recommendation for any project, other than, if you're just working on it by yourself, tinkering, subclass everything, because you're going to need it. You're going to need to have your own version of an ability system component. You're probably going to want to have custom handling for targeting for your abilities, because targeting is a whole process of find an actor and when can I lock onto it, when does the reticle change, and what are the options for this ability. The game I worked on for a long time had a lot of melee abilities, but it also had some magic abilities, and so one of them would be like a dash where the character would move forward, and we wanted it to basically affect anything that they interacted with in front of them. So we did a box overlap, and as they traversed through it, it would apply effects to anything within that area. Some of them were projectiles, and we wanted them to be homing projectiles, so we wanted it to make sure that the camera reticle, whatever you were kind of looking at, would be a sort of a fuzzy match for where you were aiming, and the particles would track to that. And then, so basically, you're working on all of these abilities, and you're putting in. You can start off a lot of this by doing a lot of blueprints to feel out what you want it to be like, and then pull it into a kind of a more robust system where you can sort of centralize. This is how we do targeting. This is how we do our animation things. So if you had like custom like animation stuff you wanted to do, you could abstract some of that stuff away too. I like doing the prototyping in Blueprint and then expanding out into C++ and then robustifying those systems, pretty much with everything with Unreal anyway. So that's kind of my approach. That's a question. Yeah.
Really random, but there were a couple of nodes, like give gameplay ability
Well, if you want to level up your character, if you want your attacks to get stronger as your character progresses, you can use that kind of a system to do that. So yeah, level 1 of this would do like a 10 damage, and level 2 would do 15. You can define effect scaling with all sorts of curves and tables, so you can look up damage values and things like that. So yeah, that's kind of built in, but it requires a fair bit of setup to use it still. Yes?
It's not really a question, just more kind of adding on to that, because I started to learn recently as well too. And I know a lot of people go into it for the like replication and multiplayer, for the single player. Kind of like the RPG head, played a lot of those, and I think that was what clicked for me most of feeling useful, is the fact that you probably played so many games where you're like, oh, you've got this stat that affects this stat, and you've got, oh, this one is a multiplicative, this one's additive, this one affects the base. And gas can do all of that.
Yeah.
The ability. So on top of what you were saying with the levels, where you can have, scaling to all of that, you can have things really interacting with each other in your kind of traditional RPG stat set sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it's been pretty cool to see how powerful it can be.
Yeah.
Also how confusing, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's very true. Yeah, it's powerful and confusing. I think one of the most fun things I did on the last, one of the second to last Unreal project I worked on, was we had we were using ultra dynamic skies, ultra dynamic weather, and when your character was outside in a blizzard, we wanted stuff to happen. So if it was really cold or if it wasn't snowing very much, there would be a different level of intensity of the weather effects on your character. And ultra dynamic weather had there was a float value that was somewhere in there for the intensity of the storm that you were in. I was like, aha, mine. So I grabbed that, and then I'd have this gameplay effect that over time would apply damage, but it was a custom effect calculation that could pull in this value that would multiply the damage by whatever the storm intensity was. So that basically, if you weren't in a storm, it wouldn't do anything. But if you were in a storm, it would do a lot of damage. And it would just increase your health decay over time and things like that. So that was really fun. But that's kind of like the crazy levels you can go to, where you've got everything going on. Everything is interconnected and feeding into it.
You mentioned towards the beginning you would use an effect to define the player as like a character, for example, with a certain set of abilities.
Yeah.
If you wanted the visuals to match for a specific character and have a different character model for a different one, would you include that in the effect for switching out the models?
So the question is, can you use effects to apply visual changes to a character to differentiate between them? I guess technically, if you hooked it into some kind of a loadout system that you had created, like if you had an artificer class that had a series of abilities that did certain things, that would then also apply a tag, and another system that would listen for changes that would then apply the visuals based on what tag you had applied to your character. So the gameplay tag then being that key to everything. If you've got the artificer tag, you wear the artificer's outfit. If you've got the brawler, you're the brawler. If you've got the mage, you've got the mage outfit going on. Yeah, I mean, it's possible. And again, because it's replicated, the clients will all see it, and you can just lean onto those systems. Yeah, John.
Sorry, I missed the beginning. So when you were setting up, you were talking about committing, are you dead, the hierarchy of the abilities and stuff like that. Is there an actual hierarchy that you set up, so if you're vulnerable, all of them don't work, or supposed to be dead, obviously none of them work, but you know what I mean, if you're blind or slow or stunned, or there's all these effects.
Yeah, you have to think through. So the question is, how do you define the hierarchy for the conditions that apply to whether or not you can do things? Carefully. Yeah. You generally want dead to take preference over everything else in most cases where you're controlling a character and you're playing a game. As I mentioned, it's nothing more funny than doing stuff whilst you're actually supposed to be dead. Especially if you've ragdolled first, then it's great. Because then you have no bones and you're trying to play animations on a thing which has no bones. But yeah, so yeah, you definitely want to you can stop a gameplay effect from applying based on tags. You can stop an ability from activating based on tags. And so the combination of all of those things, you want to make sure you'll spend a lot of time untangling that particular node spaghetti to make sure that the thing that you want is the most checked for. And you can add that manually to your stack if you want to. And that's another reason why you can have your game playability system subclassed, is you can actually literally say, before we even attempt to activate an ability, if you're dead, don't do anything. Don't even talk to those abilities. We don't want the overhead of triggering them to stop. So that's kind of another case for subclassing. Greg?
So one of the things that GAS says that it provides is like automatic replication as well as rollback and reconciliation. And I'm wondering if you've worked with that element of GAS and what your experience was.
Yeah. So here's a fun one. We were working with it was a 2 to 4 player co-op game. And we had all our abilities set up with GAS, including the sprint ability. So when you pressed, the button to sprint, your character's maximum movement speed would change. That would notify the movement component, so your character speed would increase. And what happened was, so that was the application of a gameplay effect. The removal of that gameplay effect, at that time, I think it was 5.2 or 5.3, the removal was not replicated. So what would happen was, off-host, their speed would change, but it wasn't softly changing. You'd have a whole juddery back and forth. And it took us a while to figure out what it was that was happening. And in the end, we had it so that the gameplay effect applied to increase your sprint speed. And then we had apply the effect to reduce your sprint speed when you stop sprinting. And that was replicated because the application of the effect was replicating correctly. I don't know if that's been fixed, but that was our workaround. So yeah, there are cases where you might want to just dig into it a bit more, and it is very much a case-by-case basis as to whether it's working or not. But yeah, that's where you'll spend hours in code and debug things, trying to figure out what's replicating. There are options that, there's a few basic checkboxes you can play with. Replication policies. You have local predicted, local only, server initiated, server only. These are all options that, depending on your use case, could be useful or might not be. You don't want, you want some things to be client authoritative, but you want in a live multiplayer game, you want the server to really be the authority for anything that is consequential. So you'll want to make sure that check for authority before you do the damage, because hey, your client could have just modified the code to do 500,000 damage instead of 5, and then suddenly you've got hackers going around one-shotting everything. So server authoritative, you can always do has authority checks everywhere to just really make sure that that's set. And that one. There we go.
On the topic of server authority, it doesn't seem like if you press the button on your keyboard to activate an ability, GAS would then send the activation of that ability to the server. But does the server also check if you can even activate the ability?
Yeah, most of the time, most ability activation goes through, I think the default is to just make sure that the server will say, no, you can't do that, don't be silly.
So it does all the same checks that the client would do if it weren't hacked, basically?
Yeah, and you're in full control of that. Who is the boss of whether you can or cannot do the thing. You just need to make sure when you're building it and architecting it that you are very clear on what has to go through the server and what things don't necessarily have to. So the cosmetic stuff, the things that will make it look and feel good for the player, you have full control over that sort of thing. So.
I didn't do much of the replication side of things with GAS. Is it that, like, because we were showing that, say you need a great to use an effect, and then you have a tag that affects whether you're on cooldown. Are those tags replicated, and is that how the server then knows that you can or can't as a player do that? Is that how that works?
Yeah. So the question is, do you have control over which things are replicated, including tags. And tags will, you can control whether a tag is a client-side only tag or a replicated tag. Adding and removing tags is usually replicated. The best way to add and remove tags is always via gameplay effect. There is a way of loosely adding tags and removing them, but that's kind of a bit loosey-goosey, and I don't recommend it because it can end up with random tags left on things. Don't do it, based on experience. But yeah, because the application of a gameplay effect affects the ability system, and the ability system is replicated, all of that goes through the server, and it should then propagate across, depending on what you've set the replication to be for those things.
Monitoring tags. Are these tags gas specific, or are these the general Unreal tags?
Yeah.
It sounds like it's the latter, and so how do you deal with, like you're saying,
These are,
tags?
these are gameplay ability system tags.
Oh.
So they are not the same thing as the Unreal tags,
Okay.
which is great when you're talking to Art and you're trying to explain something, and it's like, no, it's not that tag, it's that tag. It's that. No, they're the same name, but they're different. So yes, gameplay ability system tags are very similar structure. They have the name.thing.thing. They nest hierarchically. They are defined in an ini file, and you can define multiple ini files. So when you set them up, they are project settings, and you go to gameplay tags, has their own special setting. You can add a new source if you want to have an ini file specifically for certain tags, or if you've downloaded a plugin, then they may come with their own gameplay tags in their own ini file. So it's good for distribution that way. And then you can manage your gameplay tags. And so you can see here there are some which came with enhanced input. There are some which came with Niagara, because of course they did. And then there's some of the ones they came with the gameplay ability system, which was lovely. I put all mine in a thing called gasdemo.ini. And so I have an event, I have my character tags, and I have my ability tags. And these can nest quite a long way in. But yeah, they are like don't let them get out of control. Try and keep control. You'll end up with like ability.this and then abilities.this and characters.this and ability.character. It's very easy to get out of control. So someone needs to be the authority and say, no, you must have your tags in these places or your project will be a mess and you'll regret it for years. Trust me. Yeah. Any more questions? Nope. I haven't done active dev with Unreal this year. The last project I was on was cancelled in December. Hey. And the last time I tried using agentic stuff, it was terrible. And I did not recommend it at all. I was so anti everything AI and it was horrible. I'm still not happy with it. But I can't deny the fact that the bots have got better, that the agents are now actually able to answer questions, and that's a good thing for people who are learning the system, because a lot of the time it can help you find an answer, but don't trust it out of the box. But they're actually getting so good now that they're almost trustable with some of the answers that they give you. I tested it. It was all right. So yeah, you can do that. And obviously Epic are pushing their integrations quite heavily with Verse and all the rest of it. I like blueprints. I think blueprints are great for visual learners. I think blueprints are great for just quickly jotting down ideas. I know I'm not the only one. And I'm sure Verse is going to be great with all of the agents to make the things, but actually the bots aren't that bad with telling you how to do blueprint things with just like little diagrams. You can make them do things. It's quite fun. So it's getting better. It's probably quite possible at this stage. So.
Do you mind if I take a quick response to Greg's question?
Go for it.
So I haven't played with the MCP directly, but I do know that most of this stuff that is in gas things are binary, even when we reach the
would
but
think.
it's not. And so up until 5.8, which is when they added the support for agentic querying, you definitely couldn't, it would all be opaque. Like it would do its best, like we're talking about, for instance, say, well, go to your file and try to do this and tell me what you find. Because that's basically it's a human as a proxy. Hopefully with MCP, I don't know if it's there yet. I'm sure it will get there because this stuff is not as bad as actual graphics that they're trying to get it to do, things like terrain. They're actually trying to get you to be able to use agents of terrain, but this stuff is much more simplistic data tables and things like that. So it may even be available at 5.8, but I'm not sure yet.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, everyone.